Let's talk about Spider-Man 3 Part 2. This is a little bit different from the first part. I got my son on me right now. He's just a little sleepy. So as far as Spider-Man 3 Part 2 goes, we didn't really film too much of it. Part 1 kind of got canceled pretty early on in the production. So I think what I'm going to do is talk about what the film could have looked like. And I do have concept art and ideas to share with you guys on what it would have ended up being like. So where we left Part 1 off, Peter was falling from the sky. Harry had dropped him from above the clouds, and at a last-ditch moment, Peter's spider sense woke him up just before hitting the ground, and he shot a web and swung himself. The film would have ended with that. Part 2 would have opened with him gaining consciousness in an alleyway, broken leg, broken ribs, and he would have tried to get up, tries to stabilize himself and move on. So with Part 2, I really wanted to have Daredevil play a pretty big part into this movie. Daredevil and Spider-Man team up to save the rest of the people in the city. Daredevil was going to be a pretty cool part in Part 2.
Say no more. Daredevil's the name. Distraction's my game. And if I don't make it, it's been a real slice of heaven, gang. Hang loose, heroes.
Him and Spider-Man's dynamic has always been pretty, huge in the comics, and I really wanted to bring that to life on screen. One thing that we really wanted to do was bring back Julius from Spider-Man Dissension.
You're not as strong as you used to be, Spider-Man. This is where you die!
I told you, no boss battles.
The last time we saw him, he was battling Spider-Man in the building right before it collapsed on him. We wanted Julius to come back, but not as a villain, but just to see how much of a monster Harry really is, and ending up helping Peter and Daredevil with helping the remaining people left in the city. The idea with Part 2 was to be a Spider-Man and Green Goblin film, but I really wanted a majority of the film just to, show Peter, Daredevil, and Julius just helping people around the city. That was huge, and you don't really see that much in too many Spider-Man films, is them just rescuing people in need in the city. With everything going on, with the city being in rubble, there's people everywhere that needed help and assistance, and that's kind of what they were going to be doing. Peter's still having the Goblin anti-serum, trying to find Harry to try and, get the Goblin out of him. One thing we really wanted to do was have Peter get the future Foundation suit by the end of the film. I thought that would have been really cool to introduce Peter in the white with a black trimmed suit, ready for battle. By the time they do end up duking it out by the end, we wanted the final battle of the movie to take place in the sunroom that was in Spider-Man 1. That was kind of a very, huge scene, not just for me, but for Nikolai, who played Harry Osborn. That whole scene was huge for us. We thought it was just beautiful. My idea for it was to kind of have the room lit on fire. Not really, but as far as the setting for a scene goes, just have the room on fire, have Peter and Goblin duking it out in this, isolated small space.
You're pathetically predictable, like a moth to the flame. What about my generous proposal? Are you in or are you out?
It's you who's out, Gobby. out of your mind.
Didn't want to fight Harry. He feels like that if he were to fight Harry, it could result in killing him. You know, it's what happened with Harry's father, you know, and, you know, he just didn't want to go down that path. It was his brother, and realistically, his only friend left. He knew that his friend was still in there. Harry tries everything to get Peter to fight back. And Peter isn't about fighting back. Harry's his brother. He just wants to save him. You know, that was his whole goal. It's how he can honor Eddie, is just to save Harry. And, you know, he tries everything. He tries telling him that he would have killed Aunt May if he could. You know, everybody that's died for no purpose, and that it's all Peter's fault. And it does a lot to Peter mentally to hear his own brother telling him these things, but, you know, it still doesn't crack him. He's still, you know, weaves and dodges all these attacks from the Green Goblin, and it gets to a point where even Goblin's beating Peter to a pulp. And he has Peter up against a wall with a huge wrist blade, kind of like from Predator. And we see Peter, you know, let Harry stab through him. Harry takes that huge blade and, you know, it goes right through Peter's chest out of his back. And with Peter being so close to Harry by this point, he uses whatever consciousness he has left to grab the Green Goblin by the neck and grab the anti-serum and insert the serum right in his neck. Green Goblin backing up in pain, Peter hitting the floor immediately. We see moments later, Harry wakes up, the Green Goblin's out of him. And, you know, he looks around the room, and he sees Peter laying there, you know, close to death. And he puts Peter in his lap, and, you know, he's so sorry. And Peter tells him, you know, it's okay, that he did it. He saved somebody. And that kind of, for Peter, was his whole thing, was that he feels like he's just never saved anybody. So for him to pass, knowing that he's at least saved somebody, he went peacefully.
It's okay. I did it.
Just hold on. The ambulance is on this.
Don't you see? It's okay. I did it. I couldn't save him. Uncle Ben, I couldn't save him. No matter what I did. But I saved you. I did it. I did.
By the end of the film, we wanted there to be a time lapse from the first movie through Dissension, and then through part 3, part 1. And then with this one, we wanted Peter's life to end with a huge time lapse, kind of like your life flashing before your eyes, and kind of just end it on that note of, you know, him in Harry's lap, you know, passing away peacefully. We thought that was a pretty emotional but good way to end that whole series, you know, having Peter save somebody, and not only just anybody, but his brother. So, I don't know. We didn't really get too far in it. There was a script, but it wasn't a script that was really finalized or finished. It was more or less just like ideas that we had spewing around. We were kind of more focused on Spider-Man 3 Part 1 first. But I have concept art, you know. I have a couple scenes from what we were going to use from it, but nothing really final. They're really just rough draft scenes to kind of just study with, and then, you know, reshoot with better, you know, ideas in mind. So let me know what you guys think about Spider-Man 3 Part 2. And next week, we're going to be making a video on one of our canceled films, Descent. This was going to be a black and white noir Spider-Man film. It was going to be based on the police of New York City, the NYPD of the city, rather than Spider-Man or any of the superheroes. Just a different perspective of the city, seeing how the law sees superpowered people. And yeah, that's a video for next week. Stay tuned and subscribe, like, comment. I want to know what you guys' thoughts are. Yeah, make it a great rest of your day, guys.